This morning, what we're going to do is that we have 3 topics, as you'll see, and the first topic is Table A, and you should have an A. Is there an A written beside it, Victoria? Anyway, you've got it on your table, so you'll know if you're starting with Table A, B, or topic A, B, or C. And topic A is, how do we do it? What is conscious competence? And there are a number of questions there that you'll have to go through. The purpose is to determine how libraries and those working in informal adult literacy development, does it have to keep to adult? It can be. You want to stay on adult? People, okay. Okay, can be confident and apply their adult literacy skills. So, I mean, I think that's a key question. What is it what is the pedagogy that you're actually dealing with? And how can it be engaged with? Because we know learners have to engage, and how can it be transformative? And who do we partner with to do this? What are the barriers to doing this? What support do we need, and what resources do we need? And finally, we want to end up with at least 3 to 5 really great ideas that can go into the next iteration of the Libraries for Literacy. The second table is going to look at what we do, designing the kinds of programs that work. I won't go through it all. And the third table is going to look at the data collection. I was interested when I went to talk with Dan and Stella at the library not so long ago, before Out of the Box, and they talked about the potency of short research frames and getting research out to people quickly rather than 3-year-long ARC grants that build wonderful capacity, but by the time they get there, everybody's lost interest. The lag indicators are so long that people will go, oh yeah, we've done that. You know, I saw that happen to Kite, the most extraordinary program that has ever come out of this state for drama education. And the powers that be, because it had gone on for so long, and because it was going on out in community, and while these amazing things were happening in community, they weren't influencing up. And what happened was they lost their funding. You know, John Paul came in and said, well, I don't know about this, I can't. So there's really something about how do we use the results and the advocacy and the documentation to really influence up, because it's that continual influencing up that is going to keep the funding going. So that's our task for today. How do we get, basically, the 3 areas are to give advice so that we don't get feedback that this is a top-down document, that this is an organically driven document from you. What's going in here? And they're the 3 areas that we're going to look at to get there. If we've missed anything, please come and talk to me and I'll find a way to infiltrate it. The process is going to be like this. Whatever question you've got on your table is the question you'll start with. After 20 minutes or so, because we're short, we'll ask one person, so you'll appoint a team captain, one person to stay at the table, and we're going to move the rest of you on, so you all get a chance to feed into the 3 themes. But the team captain will actually stay with it so that somebody's got the whole body of knowledge. Are we as clear as mud? Good, we're adult learners, so if we're not, we put our hand up. And also, can I say as adult learners, if you're at the table and it's you're not feeling like you're contributing, or you're not feeling like it's getting you, get up and move. Move around. Don't sit there and suffer in silence. Everyone's got to be a contributor here. All right, so on your table there's an SLQ person. Can you just identify yourself if you're going to be the note taker? All right. Look, there's one more thing I want to say before we go. I just co-convened an international conference 2 weeks ago, and I can't tell you, we got people to actually put their results, to type them in, and got them on a stick and put them up at the end. It was so much better than scraps of paper and people talking. So I'm going to make a suggestion. There's a there's an iPad there, there's an iPad there and a computer, there's an iPad and a computer there, an iPad, because we'll just send it to my address, that way we'll get it in. Have we got an iPad or a computer over here? Yep, and one here, and there's a computer here as well. So can I say leave the table with your results digitally recorded? That way it's better for everyone. Okay, you've got, and Victoria's our timekeeper, and we're late, but we can, working morning tea, so just get up and get a cup of tea at any time. Off you go. Your piece of paper has got the directions there. Feel for the discussions at your table while we're waiting for it to come up.
Yep, okay, so everyone's participated in question A, that your focus was on conscious competence. At the first rotation,
I'm not going to get you to go through each rotation. Are they coming up?
They're coming up.
First of all, was it a lively discussion? Was it just a kind of mood feel about the discussion?
Okay, yes, they were all very lively discussions. Lots of expertise provided at the table, lots of familiarity and skill in the area of child and family literacy, lots of opportunities to strengthen conscious competence in the area of adult and other literacies. The use of materials that have already been produced. So rather than reinventing the wheel, make sure that you access stuff that's been produced by experts, and that's particularly useful if you have staff that might not have high level or specific qualifications but can be informed about what's on.
Okay, so as we looked at it, what we saw coming up were that you'd identified programs of excellence.
Yep.
They were there.
Yep.
That you'd identified the gaps that exist in getting to conscious competence, and it might be worth just going through those for people.
Yep. So there was a bit of a mixed bag in the gaps. Some places TAFE does continue to provide adult literacy, but there has been some withdrawal in other places. The need for adult literacy volunteers that libraries are relying on has its downsides.
Absolutely, and I heard in designing, it was this conscious competence table, talking about that volunteers don't have the skills and can't afford to actually do the programs to give them the skills. So that seems to be a major issue,
Yep. And it also means that if volunteers are doing it, library staff are not doing it, and it would be an opportunity for library staff to be developing skills. We don't have benchmarks for literacy outcomes for public programs, so not wanting to put words in people's mouths. When TAFE delivers programs, they have Australian Quality Framework Levels 2, 3 and 4. We don't necessarily include that in the things that we're required to deliver. We're stuck with the who's available at what time, different for smaller councils and larger councils. Don't want to lose the magic of some of the informal get-together activities. And for the ones that's not there, this last table.
There's another page, we'll go down.
Oh, okay.
There, there's more.
I hope you lot will find this is very hard.
So let's go to the 3 to 5 things, I think, because all those gaps you all talked about and they're recorded, but what's interesting is where you've come to and where you came to on that last rotation.
Yeah, the use of online learning was really helpful for providing things in modular formats at self-paced to help people acquire and develop that conscious skill and competence. Yes, this final table did this as well, about advocating for more funding. The framework is quite focused on, for the in-crowd, libraries, librarians, literacy providers, not the external audiences, like funding bodies and people that might need to be convinced that this is something that I need to pick up. And so creating more of an external focus for the document might be of great value, particularly for getting funds and buy-in. And throughout all of the tables, partnerships was really a key message of who's got the expertise in certain areas, be it data, networks, resources, touch into those people. You have expertise that other people can use for their outcomes, their experience can be useful for yours as well. And that was a bit of a dog's breakfast. So if there's anything else that isn't covered, please.
Your
let us know.
co-facilitator.
Okay, pretty much the same things that came out, same things from my table about building that staff capability, and also lack of services to access in the smaller communities as well. That's something that we talked about as well, given that there's so much out there in the industry, but everyone's working in silos.
Yes, I heard that on several occasions, particularly I think it was Deborah from Logan saying there's so many services going on that you have to be careful that you're not duplicating. Sorry to interrupt.
And then we're looking at also creating programs to target specific groups, and there was discussion about knowing your audience, who are your demographics in the communities. Is everyone accessing accessing the services that are required, for specific areas like employment? And also the other thing was just about formalising partnerships with their MOUs, and again just knowing that the library is not the only person that has a role in the community to deliver literacy needs. It is a whole of community responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, question B, which was about the design of programs. Where are you?
All right. So I'll do first two groups and then Tammy, will you? Yep. Okay. Great. So again, what we were discussing was what we do designing programming that achieves literacy outcomes, and it was a really fantastic discussion to be part of, because not only would we get ideas of things that were working and what people had used from other people's programs. So I now have a lot of things that I want to look up and know more about when I get back to my desk, and it's all written down in the notes, so you will be receiving this. But it was also the other concept of also hiding literacy and being sneaky about it, and using programs that have an overt purpose, but being able to sort of sneak the literacy end underneath, or doing a class that is specifically for children and young peoples, but then getting the young people to display or have a launch or have an event, which then brings the adults in, which means that you can talk about why it's important to the kids, but have the parents and the caretakers in the room, so that you are getting that extra level of literacy in your programming, getting sort of subtextually added in, but the message is still coming home, and that's how you're getting your non-library users to actually come through the doors, because that's also a really large challenge for people who have low literacy or do not feel comfortable in the world of libraries. So just going through the key concepts that came out through each of the groups. Firstly, we talked about, again, we've been talking about partnering, and of course partnering is obviously essential for designing programs that achieve literacy outcomes that are sustainable, that we can't be all things to all people, but if we want a sustainable model, then we need to work with people in the partner who are in the community who have similar or relatable KPIs, so that everybody is actually achieving what they need to for their own partner organisation. We talked about not just piggybacking, but copying or adapting things that are already existing. We talked about the importance of evidence-based programs, so that when we are advocating for to our councils or to our boards for programs that we would like to be running, that we can actually talk about why they're working and how they're working, and provide evidence that is linked to framework documents and benchmarking documents like the framework. We also talked about knowing your community and tailoring our programming to areas of greatest need, and that comes into what are the gaps. So not only just having the skill set in your organisation to be able to identify the gaps and find them, because again, we don't know what we don't know a lot of the time, and I think the hardest working librarian in a community is still to be completely across what's happening is the biggest challenge. And then finally, I think managing the success of what you do, so making sure that when we do something, it is sustainable, it is something that can continue and have impact in the community, but is also something that we can commit to, and so that we aren't sort of letting other things slide by focusing on the next new thing, putting all our marketing into the next new thing, getting the programming that's getting all the media and the hype, but then sort of losing the other bits that are really our bread and butter. So we talked a lot about, being able to really target specifically what we're doing, but making sure that it's something that is part of our daily business, and that we have the advocates or champions in our organisation that can push these things through when other things start, yelling louder in the squeaky wheels that start impacting on our services.
Just to add to that, because it's interesting that there is commonality across discussions, even across the questions. The example that question A had about Mission Australia working in the Oki community, it was one of the examples that came up in question B's discussions as being a really good one that showed how valuable cross-community partnerships can be, and that then led us in this last group discussion to looking at how the skills base of the staff that you have in the library is changing, how the leadership need is coming in to identify where you need to sort of take those community connections, and the library doesn't have to provide or be the answer for everything to everyone all the time. It was Lisa that actually said that we have to manage our success and we have to invest in doing that, because we need to be able to, through agreed or common understandings of terminology, I guess, we need to work out what's out of scope, and that sometimes is as important as trying to keep all the balls in the air. So those cross-community partnerships, one of the other elements that came up that was particularly important in some of the other discussions, I think, was that print literacy is fundamental to all else. There was a lot of discussion about digital literacy, but you can't assume that someone that's digitally literate is also print literate, and so there's issues and challenges, and I guess gaps identified within that. Something I think, just to reiterate, that's come up is the value of that hero experience, as Judith called it. So sharing that best practice and acknowledging that there is good programming happening, adapting what works and using that, not reinventing the wheel, and I guess working smarter with what we've got, because there is that continued fight for resourcing. We had a really interesting discussion about one of the programs that's really successful that started up because it had a funding base from an external community base, but the program's now self-perpetuating really, and is no longer dependent on that funding. And I thought that was probably a fairly unique example, and certainly one that the modelling behind the context for how that program was run within the community was a valuable one, because it will now continue on an ongoing basis, not dependent upon that funding which is about to be pulled. So I think that was a really good learning model going forward.
Tammy, that discussion your group had around, sorry, I'm over here, that you had around the young man at the library who was using all the data to download movies, and that was an interesting discussion, wasn't it, about how you can move those people, and really about how we talk about being illiterate, and yet most people use smartphones that are on Facebook. So I think it was from Rockhampton, I've forgotten your name, Ed's point about who are we measuring and how are we measuring, I think was another really important conversation. You might want a word on that.
I think that was the one for me that hit home, that you can be print literate and not digital literate, and vice versa. And that was a really good example. This gentleman was obviously very well clued up in some areas, but then his emotional literacies were pretty much non-existent, and looking at ways to move him across within the library to get value for him and for the community, I think it sparked some really interesting discussions. And the interesting thing is that it's not a one-off case. I mean, for Nick, I'm sure that particular gentleman takes a lot of resourcing and time for the library and the staff. but if you replicate those similar stories elsewhere, there's value in looking into that further, I think, and looking out ways going forward.
Yeah, came across as a major. And the other one from your group that I picked up was the story about the hubs and libraries working with the hubs in that Logan area. That was terrific as well. Okay, and the data measurement group, how do we do this better?
So one of the key things that came out, and it's very clear in the discussions, is that councils collect at a granular level, sort of so there is capacity to segment some of the literacy statistics. The key concepts, sort of around it is that we're not utilising, well, I think it came from the third group in actual fact, but sort of that professional development is needed for analysing data, that libraries collect it really well but don't analyse it, they don't compare it, they don't, sort of especially the smaller ones. I'm sure the big four don't need it, but sort of in terms of the others, in terms of actually comparing to their, and using it more strategically to their community to articulate their role in the community is needed. One of the key things that came out also is that we need to be better at pre-evaluation. So we do programming, and we often do programming to be busy, but what is the outcome from the learning program that we want, and can we prove that somebody learned it? So sort of really thinking about that and being clear about our learning outcomes for our learning programs. So less business, more strategic planning around data, more strategic programming. So why are we doing this programming, and is it meaning, is it actually causing impact, and can we drop something? We need to clearly and quantifiably align our statistics with national and state agendas if we want to be recognised. We need to track participants over time, if possible, so that anecdotal, sort of qualitative story, which is the Gold Coast story of my children are ready for school because we went to the library for the past 5 years. So, how do we track some of those stories? We need to prove that we're fundamental to retraining large segments of the industries that are no longer employing. It's a key aspect with a 45% increase in over 50s on New Start, and they need new skills, so we need to show that. Do we show that with collecting digital literacy training stats? We need to build advocacy through narrative and participant story, and we need the use of good technology in all libraries to gather that evaluation and that anecdotal story and report up. So thinking about how we do capture that data and it's a big number, because we actually have a big number in digital literacy, though we don't collect it. And then the anecdotal story, because I did this, I got a job. Because I did this, I'm more skilled. Because I did this, I'm happier. Because I did this, I learned this, which enabled me to do that. So it's building the story.
Great. Okay, and we haven't got the third ones in there. It was interesting, I know you've got them there, and I know you all reported on them, but it's interesting how it becomes an iterative conversation, isn't it? So very useful, and the material is all there. Okay, just talk at your table and just ensure that your team captain represented everything you need to have said, because now's the chance to get it in. So just make sure all points you want have been recorded. Was there anything from your table that didn't get recorded? No? Happy? Okay, would you thank your team captains, please, from the table? From this table, Tammy, you right? Michelle, you good? Okay, thank you, team captains, please. Jane, table, is there anything that Jane didn't get captured? No. Would you thank your team captain, please?